Tēnā koutou katoa. Kia ora. Nā mai haere mai. Welcome. I'm just going to leave this a few minutes for people to log in because I know it sometimes takes some time. Great to have you all here. Great to see some familiar faces as well. I'm just going to bring up a list on my screen so I can recognize some familiar names. Hi, Alison and Nat, Beth and Ronnie, my mother-in-law. You'll see these beautiful flowers here. Thank you so much for those today. Di, nice to see you, Di. Thanks for joining us. And Kath, Moira. Hey, Moira. Wow, so many of us. Sean up in Auckland. Michael, Stuart, my father-in-laws. Nice to have you. You'll be some of the few men on the call, I think, and it's great to have you with us. Wendy, hey, Serene. And my mum, I think, as well, or someone else called Jenny. The beauty of doing a book launch online is that it's accessible to so many other people. And when I was reflecting on, obviously, COVID-19 has probably caused a lot of inconveniences for many of us. And when I was reflecting on the benefits of maybe having an online book launch instead of one in person, that was certainly one of the benefits that people from England, my family, my friends can be part of this. In fact, people from all over New Zealand as well. So if you're outside of Wellington or Auckland, where this was planned tonight, welcome. Now I'm going to just run through a few, hey, Soph and Helen, nice to see you. I'm just going to run through a bit of what to expect over the next hour or so, and just a few Zoom etiquette things for those that are not used to using Zoom, although at the moment, after 6 weeks of lockdown, I think we're probably all pretty much used to using Zoom. It is our new normal, this kind of thing. So we are recording tonight for those that aren't able to be with us. Now I have set it so that we're all on mute just because there's quite a few of us. So there was 100 people registered tonight. So it can get quite noisy with background noises if we're not on mute. But if you do want to speak, if you do want to ask questions, just take yourself off mute. Also use the chat box as well. So I've got my glamorous assistant, who is also my wife, Patrice in the other room, who is manning things for us tonight. She is going to be keeping an eye on the chat box. Any technical difficulties you have, she can help you out with, hopefully. And yeah, she's just going to be making sure that everything runs smoothly tonight, as she does pretty much in our life as well as my book launch. So thank you, love, from the other room. We've also got some special guests tonight as well. So I didn't want to just speak to you for a whole hour and read the whole entire contents of my book. I wanted to get some other thoughts and some other opinions to share with you. And so I've invited 3 of my really good friends, respected peers, also fellow authors and women with fabulous businesses, lives and messages to share. So I'm really pleased to invite them to share something with you tonight as well as part of this session. And then we've got a bit of an open Q&A. So that's your opportunity to ask me any questions. We've had a few already, and I'll do my best to answer them. So I would love to know who we've got on the call and where you're calling from. So at the bottom where you see a chat box, please feel free to type in there where you are tonight. I'd love to get a sense of, obviously tonight was supposed to be in Auckland. We're now in, well, everywhere really. We're going to be in Wellington on Thursday. So I know there'll be a lot of Aucklanders and Wellingtonians on the line, but there'll probably be people from all over. I ran a course last night and we had someone from Brisbane on the course, which would never have happened unless we had COVID-19. So we've got Palmerston North. Hi, Natalie. Good to see you. Brooklyn, Wellington. Nottingham. Wow. It is breakfast time. You're right. Anyone dialing in from the UK, it's what, about 8 a.m. there? So well done. You're up early. Hawke's Bay, Auckland, Martinborough, Aotaki, Nio, the Hibiscus Coast. Now it sounds so glamorous when you say Hibiscus Coast. Masterton, Lower Hutt, Adelaide. Wow, welcome. Adelaide's a beautiful part of the world. Sunny Miramar, pretty much next door, Christina, or not that much further. And a few from Wellington. Awesome. So great to have you here. And thank you for taking the time to be part of tonight as well. So it's, I guess today I was reflecting on the week that was supposed to be, I guess. So today I was due up in Auckland and I was due to speak at a conference. I was next in line after Mike King. It was probably the biggest conference I'd spoken at. And as we all know, conferences aren't really a thing at the moment anymore. And so I find myself sat in the bedroom, actually, of all places, doing my book launch in a way I never thought I would. And ironically, without any books. And you'd think to yourself, well, third time, it's got to be third time lucky. Surely you know how this works. And I was actually a month early this time with my deadline. And of course, then COVID-19 happened and we all became more than a month late for pretty much everything. So for those that have made pre-orders, the book is coming hot off the press pretty much as we speak. So it's due for delivery to me on Friday. So obviously the print factory haven't been able to work during lockdown. That just got lifted in level 3 this week. So the books are coming hot off the press this week. They will be with you first thing next week. So if you have already ordered and you do make an order tonight, that's when you can expect delivery. And it's led me to reflect on a few things. These are uncertain times. It presents challenges as well for us, and potentially a different perspective as well. There's been all sorts of different experiences that people have shared with me over the last 6 weeks. And some of those have been, hey, I've had the time and perspective to think about life, to think about what I really want. And others have been the other end of the extreme. I'm stuck at home with a few kids and my partner's an essential worker and it's absolute hell. So there's two different ends of the extreme in terms of our experiences. But I don't think anybody's life hasn't changed over the last sort of 4 to 6 weeks. And you might have seen the blog that I did yesterday that was pretty much recounting that yes, things are very different for me this week and for many of us over the last few weeks, but there is also a lot to be thankful for. And so I'm thankful for being able to share this with you tonight. And I'm thankful that these books are actually coming. This copy that you see here is very precious because it's the only one that exists in the world at the moment. So it's the one I'll show you tonight. And then the others, the ones that you're supposed to receive, will be coming to you at the end of this week. And obviously we know that the couriers are pretty overloaded at the moment. So we don't expect overnight delivery, but early next week is when you will be receiving your copies. And I'm really looking forward to hearing what you think. One of the things when you write a book is that not many other people see it until it gets out in the world. And so you never really know if what you've written is good and helpful and useful for people until they tell you. So that'll be the next few months for me, actually putting this out into the world and seeing what comes back. So I'd love to know your thoughts as and when you do get your copy. So on that subject, any pre-orders that we've had will have a special gift included with them. And that includes any orders right up until the end of this week. So don't worry if you haven't ordered yet, you will still get the free gift. And if you have already ordered, you haven't missed out because you will too. And those free gifts are these wonderful little, my friend Kath Cooper, who I think is on the call, does these beautiful, she runs a business called Simply Kawa Kawa. It does these beautiful balms. So you will get a Simply Kawa Kawa balm with every single book that's ordered up until Friday of this week. And Kath, if you're on the call and you want to pop a website link to Simply Kawa Kawa balm into your into the comments box so people can find you, that would be awesome. So I want to introduce a few people that are on the call. I'm going to read a bit, tell you a bit about the book, read a bit from the book, and then throw it open to questions. That's pretty much the format tonight. If you've got questions as we go, feel free to pop those in the comments box, and I'll do my best to pick those up. And if I don't, Patrice will give me a nudge at the end for the ones that I have missed. So this book really for me is, it's an evolution of Like a Girl. So Like a Girl was book number 2. Some of you may have read it. This really was an evolution from that. What I hadn't envisaged when I launched Like a Girl is how much things like self-doubt and imposter syndrome would resonate with people. So I often call myself the accidental imposter syndrome expert as a result of what happened after Like a Girl. So Like a Girl is now 2 years old. And it's the one thing that I'm consistently asked to speak about, to teach, to share. And it's something that resonates with so many of us. And I wanted to unpick that a bit more and where it comes from. And a lot of my conversations with people over those 2 years at these events and at these workshops had been around the multiple roles that we have as women, the multiple roles that we have to fulfill, the expectations, not just that we have in terms of taking our place in society, but also the expectations that often we place on ourselves. And this need to be perfect. This need, if we don't get it perfect, we may as well not have bothered. We're a failure, and it's proof that we're actually not as good as people think that we are. And so that's what I wanted to unpick a little bit more. And that's how the Superwoman Survival Guide came about. So it's really that sometimes our quest for perfection, although it drives us and can be positive in that space, our quest for perfection is often our undoing. Often the goal we set ourselves isn't quite achievable. And so we set ourselves up to fail. And of course, then when we do fail, we find that we're beating ourselves up. We tend to have many roles as women. We tend to want to do them all perfectly, or at least very well. And there comes this quote that I often hear from women, particularly women with kids, of the juggle. As part of the research for this book, one of the questions that I asked was, what is your biggest challenge in life? By far the most popular answer was motherhood. And the second most popular answer was the juggle. And I'm guessing they are just people experiencing the same juggle without kids. So it's whether we're juggling family, our careers, our social lives, our health, and everything that's expected of us, and then adding kids into the equation, there is this juggle. And yet there are so many things we have, the strengths that we have, that if we are aware of them, if we learn to leverage them, can make us amazing. Yet if we focus on the stuff that we're not, if we focus on this quest for perfection, it so often takes us away from the things that we are. And of course, then we're left thinking that we're not enough because we're not appreciating the things that we are. So one of the things I talk about in the book, and one of the questions that I asked was, how do we leverage our superpowers? How do we know what they are? Are we in touch with our strengths? And in a tall poppy society, particularly like New Zealand, do we feel comfortable talking about our strengths? And have we talked about enough of them enough to know what they are and how we use them? And so when I asked this question, when researching for the book, what are your superpowers? What are your strengths? What do you admire in others? Here's some of the stuff that came back. Here are the most popular answers: empathy, resilience, calm, optimism, confidence, kindness. These are all things that we either see as our strengths or we admire in others, and they are superpowers. But how often do we overlook that stuff in favor of, yes, but I haven't got this, yes, but I haven't got that, yes, but I need to do a bit more of the other. The problem with us sometimes, particularly as women, is that we tend to think if we're good at something, so is everybody else. So it's not special. And we overlook our strengths as a result of that. So I'd encourage you tonight to think about your strengths. Think about your superpowers. Think about what you admire in others, because that's normally an indicator that if you admire it in others, it's something you value. Because if we're going to reach our potential, it's not going to come from this quest for perfection and beating ourselves up when we fall short. It's going to come from knowing who we are and what we bring to the piece. So for me, potential has two sides. It is the self-belief, the belief that we actually have potential in the first place. And then, of course, the energy to deliver on that potential. And that's the work that I've done pretty much for the last 5 or 6 years. And it's kind of where my two books meet. So The Rough Guide, my very first book, that was about the energy to deliver on our potential. Like a Girl, that was about the belief that we have potential. The Superwoman Survival Guide is kind of both. I've taken all of that stuff and put it into one. And talking of a rough guide to a smooth life, my mum, who's on the call, will remember she's probably the only person on the call that was at my first book launch, because she was one of the very few. I think there was 10, I think, at my very first book launch. We had it in a very small town in England where Margaret Thatcher was born, and it was famous for not really much else, and certainly wasn't famous for a rough guide to a smooth life. And that was 6 years ago, and that's where all this started. So I'm delighted to be able to have more than 10 people on the call tonight, and obviously to be able to share this with my mum and my dad as well. On that note, this book is dedicated to the men in my life, which might seem ironic because it's a book about women. So my other books have been devoted to some very special women in my life. This one is devoted to my dad, my brother David, and my 3 nephews, Noah, Luke, and Jack. So I have some very special men in my life. And although I talk a lot about women, I always want to make sure I acknowledge them as well. And this week is both my mum and dad's birthday. So I want to wish them a happy birthday as well while we're on the call. And someone's telling me that's where they grew up. Someone else grew up in Grantham. Emma, thank you, Emma. Where were you when The Rough Guide to a Smooth Life was launched? We could have done with all the extra people there. So I'm going to pause for a moment, and I'm going to open up for, there are a few special women on the call who I've invited to be here to share their thoughts on the Superwoman complex that we find ourselves in. And I'm going to sort of have a bit of a panel discussion. So there's 3 really well-respected women who I count as friends, and I'm lucky to have as peers and often advisors as well on this journey. And the first one is from the glamorous Hibiscus Coast, Nat. So if you're there, I'm going to take you off mute. And if you want to start your video, I would love for, so Nat, if I introduce Nat while she's sorting that out, Nat is actually my business coach. She knows a lot about sales and marketing. She's my ear in that space. And she's also the author of the book Imperfect Action, Allergic to Perfect, sorry.
No worries. Means the same.
It does, Nat. You know what? That's a classic example of me not being perfect, eh? So Nat does a lot of stuff about her thing is imperfect action. You know, don't worry about whether it's perfect, just take the action. And I love that. And her book Allergic to Perfect, which I'm waiting to read because that's also coming hot off the press, eh, Nat, this week.
I know, both you and I love the fact that we're sharing like book hot off the press together in the same print house too at the moment, aren't they?
It is in the same print house. Yeah, hopefully soon not still in the print house. So now I'd love for you to share with us your thoughts on, because of the work that you do around helping women sell with confidence, around imperfect action. You do a lot of work with perfectionists and you do a lot of work in this space. I'd love you to share some thoughts around the Superwoman Complex and your own experiences.
Thank you, Jess, and just obviously a massive congrats to you, like hands down. This is your third book. My hat off to you. Like, you've been a massive inspiration. I haven't actually told you this. You've been a massive inspiration for me to have got my first book written. Yeah, so well done, babe. And what an amazing turnout for you tonight in celebration of you.
Thank you.
That's awesome. And happy birthday to your mum and dad. That's very
cute. Thanks.
I love that your book that we're all about to receive is really highlighting these important topics. They're massive topics, and the more that we can, I think, help women realize that it's normal, that what they're feeling is normal, that it's not an isolated feeling, that we all feel these things. And you know, it does a couple of things, I think, is it actually helps remind you all, despite the social media highlight reels, that no one has their shit together. You know, you might have one bit together, but something else over here is not quite right. And just whenever you see, you know, these social media highlight reels, just know that, yeah, they might be having a great day today, but perhaps it wasn't so good the day before. And it's not about comparing yourself to others. I think it's just normalizing that everyone goes through these things. And I love how you address in the Superwoman book about, you know, be your best. You know, and what is that for everyone? And it's really different. But, you know, for me, I often talk to my tribe about, you know, backing yourself. Really back yourself. That's a big superpower that all of us can tap into, because you're the actual expert in your own life, and not second guessing yourself. I think that's another superpower we dismiss a lot. And so it kind of comes back in a circle, and it's like, hey, you know what? Stop listening to your inner critic when she scrolls and compares, and instead come on over and choose to, you know, listen to your inner mentor, because she knows way more than your inner critic, and she's actually better at driving the car. You know, so I think it's just about choice and who you decide to listen to in that day.
Love that. Especially the inner critic piece, because quite often that's the loudest voice in our heads, especially when we get out of our comfort zone, especially when we challenge ourselves, eh?
Absolutely. And it's just, again, we all have that. Like, if you see someone taking bigger risks or doing things that you want to be doing, just know that they're probably really uncomfortable. Then that, you know, to get that growth, there is going to be a little bit of, you know, uncomfortableness. But again, surround yourself by people who are going through the same thing, because when you normalize it, you actually can go, oh, okay, I can do this. And, you know, you move through it.
Awesome. Thank you, Nat.
Thanks, Jess.
I would love for you to, if you've got a link for your website or your book or something, you can pop in the comments. So anyone that wants to find out more about you. So it's Natalie Toloff. She helps women sell with confidence. She's amazing. She's my own coach. That's how amazing she is. And looking forward to reading your book as well when it comes off the line.
I'm like you. I've got the only live book as well. So I go ask. Someone said birthing our, next Cutler Welsh was like, we're birthing our books together.
This is true. It's a special experience.
Thank you, babe. I wish you so much. Yeah, I wish you so well. And it's such a cool turnout for you.
Thank you. And thank you for being here tonight.
No worries.
And on the subject of Natalie Cutler Welsh, so there's a theme here that it's not only Nats that I've invited to speak, but there is another one. And Natalie Cutler Welsh is, she's many things. She is a speaker. She's an author of If Only They'd Told Me, a parenting book. She is the go-to girl. She's an impact entrepreneur. She is famous for upping your brave. That's what she helps women with, and men, and building our resilience. So she's very well connected. She has a wealth of experience that I've been able to tap into and draw from. And she's also been able to connect me with people all over New Zealand I thought that I would never meet. So thank you for that, Nat. And I'd love to invite you to share your thoughts on this Superwoman Complex, because I know it's some of these themes are very similar to the work that you do with Up Your Brave. So you may have to take yourself on mute and pop your video on if it's not already.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect. There you are. Welcome.
Well, I was just listening to you guys. Aren't you guys all sitting here going, I could just listen to Jess all day. Like, your voice, you're so insightful. And your tone, you're so calm. I love it. I've seen you speak in person. I've obviously had you on my panel last week. I'm so excited for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I wrote my book, which was a while ago, okay, so my daughter's 13 now, and I think she was, I don't know, 7 or something at the time. So if only they told me all the things you wish you'd been told, from pregnancy to starting school. And when I look back at that book, because now I do help women entrepreneurs, specifically authors and speakers, to up their brave, like you said. But what I find is a lot of people are stuck or living life in the should zone, or the frustration zone. And when I look back, I go, oh my gosh, like most of my early motherhood time, I was totally in the should zone. And then the frustration zone mainly, like, why isn't he home earlier? I need some me time, in that kind of bitterness and resentful zone. And what I've managed to do now in moving forward is to get to my place where I live. I call it in the up your brave zone, or in the impact zone. And so that's really the thing, is I want to encourage women particularly to not be driven by, what you should be doing, what you think you should be doing. And that comes into the perfectionist superwoman thing, like Nat T was mentioning too. We scroll through Facebook and it's like, oh, she's doing a retreat. Oh, maybe I should do a retreat. Or or she's written a book. I have so many people say to me, I think I should start a podcast. And I'm like, no, you should not, unless you really, really want to. So I'm so into encouraging people to up their brave, say what they want, say what they actually want to do, not what they think they should do or what they said they would do. And then the next part, of course, is to take action, to do the steps to make it actually a real thing and make it happen. Like you guys with your books, there'll be tons of people going, oh, I should really write a book. It's like, should you, or do you want to? Because they're different things. So I think that's probably the biggest thing. And again, when you talked about the juggle, I talk a lot about juggling the mother load. And for me, I think the hardest thing is that running a business while raising a family, while not losing yourself in the process. And I don't know if you ladies here tonight, and men, can relate to that. You might not be running a business, but job, kids, relationship, marriage. And oh, by the way, what about me? It's hard to keep all the things happening. And so, yeah, it is the juggle, but I think it comes back to checking in and going, am I actually doing what I want to do? Or am I stuck in the should zone or the frustration zone?
I love that, Nat. Thank you so much. The should, so often that's the space that we play in, isn't it? I should be doing this, I should be doing this, or I should be stronger at this. The amount of people when I'm doing my coaching that say, we talk about their strengths, and then they'll say, yeah, but should I be? And then talk about a weakness, better at this, because that's where we focus our energy so much of the time. Awesome. Thank you so much, Nat, for joining us, for sharing your thoughts. Could you also pop a link, because you do so many things. If you're a woman in business, this is someone you need to connect with, because she literally knows everybody else in the whole of New Zealand. Sometimes it feels like. So this is someone you should connect with. So Nat, if people want to find you, if you pop your details in the comments so that they're able to do that, that would be awesome.
Will do. And I am in Auckland. I always think people think, because I have a Canadian accent, that I'm in Canada, but I'm in Auckland.
You won't be the only Canadian on the call tonight. And I just want to quote something actually that my friend Christina did actually put on, and I love it, Christina. So progress over perfection. That's what we're talking about, isn't it? Rather than trying to achieve perfection and hit the big goal, just taking those little steps each time further and further towards where you want to be. So I love that. So the Superwoman Survival Guide is really a guide to surviving our own expectations sometimes as well. We are often our harshest critics, as Nat has just been talking about. And so when we have this juggle that we're trying to sustain, and we have all these shoulds that we want to deliver. We find ourselves juggling many, many things. And then, of course, this feeling of overwhelm and busy that is so highly reported is kind of a expected consequence when that's how we approach our life. And this feeling of falling short, this feeling of needing to be more, and of course that does take us away from the great stuff that already exists within us. And so before I read a bit from the book, I just want to obviously, to prove that it's not just Nats that get on the call tonight, to open up to someone who's a very very special person. She does so many things, and she's someone that I'm delighted to call a very good friend, as well as a fellow author. So Serene Chic is the author of The Tiny Life Guru. She's a speaker and a coach. She speaks a lot about emotional resilience, and she speaks wonderfully about that topic. She's also a documentary maker. There's literally no end to this person's talents. And her latest documentary, which I've just watched, is a must watch for everybody, especially if you have kids. She's done a documentary with her husband Rob about keeping kids safe online, and it was eye-opening for me in terms of the amount of porn that's available online, often without people having to look for it, kids as young as 7 having to look for it. So Serene is going to pop a link for us in the comments to that, because I think it's an important documentary for us all to see. But also I want to open up the call for Serene to share some thoughts, because she is the author of The Tiny Life Guru, and I've heard her speak a number of occasions on emotional resilience, on helping women to succeed, and so many of the things that she talks about are things that I write about too. So I'd love, Serene, to hand over to you, if you're able to put your video on and unmute yourself and share some thoughts with us.
Hi, Jess.
Oh wow,
Hi,
you're
everyone.
actually at the beach. The weather is not like that in Wellington.
It's not. I'm not really at the beach. Gosh, I wish I was. Not obviously right now, but maybe after. Jess, first of all, I just want to say a massive, massive, massive congratulations to you. This is so exciting. Your 3rd book. When you told me that you were writing a 3rd book, I was beyond excited. Been waiting and waiting for it to come, and it's an absolute honor to be here talking at your launch.
Thank you.
Jess is one of the most authentic people I have ever met in my entire life, and her integrity is something, it's absolutely mind-blowing. She's just an incredible human being. And Patrice, who's sitting there in the other room, you too, what an incredible support that you are. And I'm so proud of you, Jess. I'm so proud when I say that Jess is my friend. So I just want to get that out of the way, because I'm feeling quite emotional.
You've made me emotional now as well.
But what you've written about as well, oh, Jess, it's so important. You know, I really believe that in society we get hit with things and we kind of do a pendulum swing on them. And you know, I think that there was a time when we decided that yes, we can do, you know, all of the man's work as well, and we can do this, but then we also had all of our own stuff that we were doing. And then as time has progressed, as was mentioned earlier about highlight reels and things like that, I feel like our pendulum has swung way too far, hence the Superwoman Complex. And Jess, it's people like you. It's like when you write a book like this, you are one of the people that will be instrumental in bringing that pendulum back to a balance. And it's all about showing that it's okay to be ourselves. And Natalie, you had touched on that as well. You know that. We all try to look like we've got our shit together, right? And that's just not the reality of life. And when we start saying it's okay not to, then, you know, it breaks down that whole overwhelm that we can find ourselves feeling. And, you know, it's actually quite poignant that your book has come out now, Jess, because I just was reflecting there, because we've been so busy with the documentary, which has been an 18-month thing. I thought, man, just the other day I looked and went, I've actually only had 10 full days off in the last 365. So that's not great, you know, and it's like when I come to moments like that, I think to myself, right, okay, I have to bring it back to my own values, you know, like what do I value in life? Who am I? And I have to be honest with myself about my strengths and about my weaknesses. I'm really bad at being an overscheduler as well. So it's about, if you don't feel shame around the topic, then you can really look at yourself and go, this is actually a weakness for me, and either I want to strengthen it or I want to focus on my other strengths, because to me it's about weighing up the cost. What is the actual true cost of me having to hold on to my expectation that I need to achieve this, and whose expectation is this in the first place? So I'm very excited to read your book, because I think as well it's about that reaching out, that both of you were, well, all three of you were saying, that ability to reach out to others, because when you feel that you can't reach out to others, you get stuck and you think, oh yeah, maybe I should just keep going, maybe I should just keep going. So yeah, and I'm not very good at taking my own advice, so reading it through your book is going to be great, right?
And then I read it through your book and get the advice.
Yeah, because I don't take it from myself. Of course. Yeah.
Oh,
So
Serene,
thank you, I'm very excited.
thank you so much, and thank you for your lovely words, and the stuff that you do in the world as well is phenomenal. So I'd love for you to put a link in the comments to your website,
Yes.
so people can find you, but specifically as well the documentary, because I think that's awesome, and everybody should watch it.
Yeah, I'll pop a link there to my documentary site, and in the About Me you can find my other stuff.
Fabulous.
Thank
Your
you,
other
Jess.
very important stuff.
Thank you, Jess.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you, all three of you. The only other thing I want to ask you to do is, I've got a number of prizes to give away tonight. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what those prizes are, and then I'm going to get you to help me give them away, just so I can't fix anything. And I've already mentioned, obviously, delivery we know is slightly delayed because of COVID and the lockdown situation we found ourselves in of late. So I've actually got a special going, and I planned it for Mother's Day, which is in New Zealand on Sunday. And you can actually get a copy of Like a Girl and a copy of the Superwoman Survival Guide for $50 as part of that package. But here's the catch: not in time for Mother's Day, although it's a Mother's Day special. So the idea is mother-daughter package. So mother-daughter package still, but not on Sunday, instead on Monday or Tuesday. So we're going to pop the link in the comments for how you can get that. So if you haven't got a copy of Like a Girl and you would like to get that with the Superwoman Survival Guide, you can get that and get $10 off at the same time. Both of them for $50, but not to be dispatched in time for Mother's Day, which is this weekend, if anyone needs reminding. And instead, they will be dispatched early next week to you. Of course, the Superwoman Survival Guide is available for purchase on its own. Free postage and packing across New Zealand. All of the pre-orders will be signed, and we've got the beautiful Kawa balms as well that are going out for free with any order that we get before Friday, and any order obviously that we've already had. So I have actually got one of those mother-daughter packages to give away. So that's a copy of the Superwoman Survival Guide and a copy of Like a Girl together. I've also got a trilogy gift set, which is worth about $150. So there's some beautiful stuff in there. And then I've got an exciting but quite random gift set as well, which I have to look what's in it so I can tell you how random and exciting it is. It's got some beautiful products, some beautiful sweet treats. It's got hand sanitizer, because let's face it, we all need that at the moment. Everyone has a shortage of that. Some beautiful notebooks, some beautiful to-do lists, because we like to fill out to-do lists. We like to overschedule, as Serene has alluded to, and a copy of Like a Girl. So those three packages, how we're going to work this out is, so it's completely random. We've got 53 people on the call tonight. And so we've got an attendance list with everybody is numbered. And I'd love for the three of you that have just spoken to pick a number at random, as long as it's between 1 and 53. Probably not number 1, because I think that's me on the call. So between 2 and 53. And then that will let me know who we need to send the prizes out to. So Serene, you're up on my screen. Pick a number between 2 and 53.
11.
Number 11. So Patrice is tallying this against our attendance list and will be able to tell us who won. Now, this is for the first prize, which is the pack of Superwoman Survival Guide and Like a Girl. So Patrice, do you want to tell us who number 11 is? You might just type it in the comments. And we've got number 27 and number 53. Oh, lucky last, Nat. Well done. So we'll get back to you on who those winners are when we've tallied them against our attendance list. And I will be sending those out to you. Obviously, the one that has the Superwoman Survival Guide in it will be coming next week. And I just want to do a couple of shout outs while we're doing that, because I noticed some other people have joined the call, particularly my really good friends, Dee and Jan from the UK. Hi to you. You've known me since I was probably about 13, maybe 14 at the most. So we played soccer together when I was in the UK, and it's great to have you here. So thank you for joining. And we've had a few other people as well. Christine, good to see you. Haven't seen you for ages. Creativa, Vera, hello. Vera is responsible for the beautiful branding that that happens in my place. Thank you for joining us, Vera. And Jill from up the road. So great to see so many people on the call. And Jeannie, thank you for joining us, Jeannie. We've been working together today. It's great to have you on the call too. So Patrice is now commenting on our winners. So we've got Wendy Lindsay. You are the winner of our Like a Girl and Superwoman Survival Guide. Diane Laws, you are the winner of our Trilogy Special Pack. And Lofi Cooper, you are the winner of the very awesome and quite random mixed gift package. So what I will do is, I've obviously got all of your details from when you registered. Patrice will keep a note of those names and prizes, and we will get in touch with you after tonight to get your addresses so that we can dispatch those to you. So a few thank yous before I move on, because I'm petrified of, I have my notes with me because those that know me know my memory is shocking and I'm always worried about forgetting things. And one of the things that I must make sure I don't forget is the most important thing, and that's to thank people. And there are so many people to thank when you've done these things. It doesn't just happen by yourself. So I want to say a thank you to all the people that made this possible, including the people that are working in the factory now to get them printed, to Amy and the book print crew. I want to thank the editors, my PR people, all the people that go into making this happen. And also the people behind the scenes, the people that don't just go into making a book happen, but go into helping me happen. And so obviously my wife Patrice is at the top of that list, especially getting stuff together tonight, making sure I wore the right shirt and the flowers were in the right position and all of that stuff, putting makeup on me, but also the emotional support and heavy lifting that happens every other day of the year that is not launch day. My parents, who have been there since obviously day one, but particularly day one where book launches have been concerned, and they've come along to everything I've ever done, even when nobody else has. So it's special to share this with you. And I also want to thank my extended family in New Zealand as well. So all of my in-laws and the people that are supporting me in what I do, and for all of you to be on the call tonight, and those that keep showing up at my events and the things that I do, and giving me feedback as well when I get a response from a newsletter that I've put out or a comment on a blog that I've written. As a writer, you never know if what you've written is any good unless someone tells you. And for me, the marker of how good it is that it impacts people, that it resonates for someone. So the best, rather than selling 1,000 copies of this, the best thing for me is to get emails back from people that have read it that say, this is what it meant to me, or this is how it helped me, or this is what I do differently now as a result. And from day one, that has been, I often tell the story of my first book, The Rough Guide. My first royalty check for A Rough Guide to a Smooth Life, which was published in America, was worth less than $5. I've kept it so I can frame it one day when I've got royalty checks that are worth a lot more. And even though I was earning very little money from A Rough Guide and very little sales, I was learning so much. And every time I got an email from someone saying, I've read this and it mattered, or I've read this and it's helped me in some way, that for me was worth more than any amount of $5 royalty checks I could have accumulated. So massive amounts of thank yous. And I'm kind of sorry that I can't pour you a champagne, because the idea was tonight we would have a champagne reception, but I have one, and I hope that wherever you are, that has one too. If not, find someone at home that can bring you something, or a non-alcoholic alternative. And cheers to you, cheers to those that have helped me along the way. Thanks for being here. And here's to the Superwoman Survival Guide. So I'm going to pause for a second to read a little bit about the book, and then we'll open for some questions. So I'm going to actually read a bit of the introduction, because that seems like a good enough place to start. But before I do that, just one of the things, and this actually comes from my editor, not me, when she was trying to sum up the book in a few words, she summed it up so perfectly, which is kind of her job as an editor. I said, can I use that? And she said, yeah, sure, I'd be honored. So I'm going to use that. And this is for India. This book is not about changing who you are. It's about changing the way you think about who you are, freeing yourself from the pursuit of a superwoman ideal that's unrealistic and makes so many of us unhappy. This sense of not measuring up, the need to be more and do more, keeps us constantly striving for something that'll always be just out of reach, because it exists only in the movies. It's what I refer to as the Superwoman Complex. So let me read a couple of pages from the introduction, just to give you an idea of how this has come to be and what it's all about. Is it a bird? Is it a plane? No, it's you rushing through life like it's one big emergency, trying to be all things to all people and do everything without burning out. Like Superwoman, our schedule is busy and we're constantly responding to other people's emergencies, rushing around, trying to put out fires and rescue others. High achieving women have this drive to do more or better, to prove ourselves. On top of this, most of us doubt our abilities, worry we're falling short, get overwhelmed at the amount on our plate and worry that we're not enough. So many of us these days admit to feeling overworked, overwhelmed, and overscheduled, juggling families, careers, and friends, struggling to keep up with the never-ending demands. We go through life trying to support everyone else, and then when we burn out, we feel guilty for letting people down. Yes, life is full, life is fast, but we also place additional unnecessary pressure on ourselves by trying to also make it perfect, to be Superwoman. Life has changed and evolved for women, and whilst the opportunities are endless, the same cultural norms and upbringings weigh us down with an expectation to fulfill many roles. So now we're encouraged to be career high flyers and are still required to be great partners, take care of things at home, raise the kids, and be at the school gates for 3 p.m. Expectations have increased, along with the amount of balls that we juggle in the air. And it's led to this quest to be Superwoman in all areas of our life. What do we think of when we think of Superwoman? Is it the mythical superhero in comic books? A woman who's simply doing more than the average woman? Or someone who pushes herself to exceed everything she does and succeeds? Most of us think of strength, world-saving, someone who has it all, can do it all, is generally admired and respected, someone we wish we could all be. We nearly always think of her as someone else and someone better than us, that they belong in a superhuman category. She may be a high-flying career woman who always looks amazing when she drops the kids at school with their freshly made organic lunches. She's been up since 5 a.m. doing yoga and making hand-pressed veg juice for the family. In her spare time, she's training for a marathon, volunteers raising money for breast cancer, and she may well not eaten a carb since 2005. But is she really perfect? What about those women that do seem to have it all and thrive? How do they do it? The answer is that most of them don't. Whilst it might seem on the surface that all their plates are spinning, take a closer look, get to know them, see what's happening behind closed doors and in their heads. What are their stress levels like? How do they sleep? Their relationships? There'll be a wobbly plate somewhere that needs spinning before it topples. Are we using Photoshop on those beautiful selfies? Do we have an entourage of people helping us at home, a high-performing team at work that help carry the load? If we compare ourselves to the people we think are Superwoman, we will always fall short. Quite often, perfect doesn't exist. We can never see the full story, and even the strongest women have weaknesses. In fact, the more like Superwoman they appear, the greater the chance they're battling some kind of insecurity or exhaustion, or not feeling good enough, tired of fulfilling all those expectations on the inside. Yet we look at these people and we're encouraged to strive, to lean in and be perfect, whilst feeling like we're falling short and never measuring up. We're human. Sometimes what we all need, rather than to do more, is to do less, to take a break, permission to be ourselves rather than superwoman, and not to feel guilty, like it's not enough. The higher the expectations we place on ourselves are, the more unrealistic they're likely to be. We set ourselves up to fail sometimes, so it's no wonder we feel like we're not enough. It's what leads to these feelings of overwhelm and busyness. The more we have to become, the more we have to do, and the less time we get to do anything that actually matters. If we hold ourselves to an impossible standard, we will sadly always fall short. But we tend to think it's all or nothing. If I can't be CEO, chair of the PTA, out-earn my peers, then what's the point? I failed. If I'm not growing my own organic food in the garden, teaching the kids piano, learning to speak French in my spare time, making raw meals from the celebrity cookbook each night and having mind-blowing sex, then I'm failing as a mother and a wife. So I feel guilty. Guilty I'm not at that 4:30 meeting because I'm going to pick the kids up. Or guilty I didn't go to the school recital because I had that 4:30 meeting. What if we were to enjoy life without these expectations and this guilt that we place upon ourselves? Trying to be superwoman makes us less productive. Our ambition to be superwoman can actually be our undoing. And once we let go of this need to be perfect, what we find is that we actually become better. Life becomes more manageable and we succeed at what we're attempting because we're not setting ourselves up to fail. We embrace who we are. And what we find is that we have more joy in life. We find time for us and the overwhelm disappears. Our schedules start to align with our priorities. And we have more choices. We become healthier and happier with more energy and therefore more to give those who depend on us. We feel less guilt. We don't spend as much time chasing our tail and we can think clearer, sleep better, and we become enough as we are. So be your own superwoman. Know she is real, imperfect, and yet still amazing. Let go of the superwoman complex to move from the impossible to the amazing reality that we actually have within us. You are amazing as you are. So stop chasing the myth. It's why we feel like we don't measure up. If we let go of trying to be perfect and trying to have it all, we might just find that we already do and that we already are. Life changes for the better. And instead of superwoman, you become you. And no one is you. That is your power. That's something that I'm constantly trying to tell, not just everybody else, but myself a lot of the time. And that really is what the Superwoman Survival Guide is about. How do we unpick some of these myths and expectations we have acquired along the way so that we can be amazing as we are? So what I'd like to do now is have another sip of champagne and also throw it open to some questions. So if anybody on the call tonight has got any questions, and I have received a couple as well that I'll throw in from other people in advance. But if you've got any questions, please let me know. Dee, I'm so pleased you could join from the UK as well. You probably have better weather here than we do in Wellington right now. It's one of the reasons I was so glad this is an online launch, because I didn't have to leave the house. And my friend Sophie, you reminded me earlier today that the last book launch we had, Like a Girl, the weather was also shocking. And I'm wondering if that's a book launch thing or perhaps a Wellington thing, or maybe a bit of both. So feel free to type me a question in the comments box. Anna, great to see you here. Thank you so much for joining. I can't wait to send you the book as well. And thank you, Wendy. I'm glad that resonated. So any questions, please feel free to pop them in the box. I'm also going to have a look at, I wrote a list of the questions that, we had a couple that came in earlier that I'm going to have a look. One of the questions I often get about books, not just this one, and probably other people on the call that have written books get this question too, is how long did it take, or how do you write a book? I think it's one of those things, it's like, how do you eat an elephant? It seems like a big thing, and a lot of people think, well, where do you start? How does it just become a book? And it doesn't, and each one of my 3 books have been written differently. A Rough Guide to a Smooth Life started off as a series of blogs over the course of a year traveling, when I suddenly realized I've got so much stuff, I should probably put it into a book, and that gave rise to me learning. How long does it take? The Superwoman Survival Guide took 6 months. That's a lot quicker than A Rough Guide to a Smooth Life. I get quicker every time. I guess that's practice. One of my my heroes, Dr. Libby Weaver, she writes pretty much a book a year. It's 13 books in 13 years now for her. And she told me recently that it takes her about 3 months now from start to finish. So hopefully by the time I've written 13 of these, it will also only take me 3 months, but it's about 6 months, and we're all different. It's whether you sit down and do a little bit every day, or whether you actually don't do anything for a long time because you're too busy thinking about it and procrastinating, and then sit down and bash one out. And that's certainly been my preferred tactic of late. I don't know if anyone else on the call wants to comment on that as well, because I know obviously Nat and Serene, you've all written books, and possibly some other people on the call too.
Yeah, my first book, it took 5 years, but it started up as my book. And then with the Christchurch earthquake, we kind of lost everything. We lost the house, we had a baby, we lost the job. We ended up in Auckland, and I met Jackie, and we ended up co-authoring together. And our tagline, we're not the experts, we're the best friends you never knew you had. But it actually took us, between the two of us, 5 years to write it. So it's a long time, but we wrote it as we lived it. So, we were writing about all the things, and I'm writing a book now. It's called Up You're Brave, and I'm using Scrivener, which if anyone's writing is a cool kind of like, instead of doing it in a Google Doc, you can do it in Scrivener. And that will definitely be quicker, because how could it possibly be longer than 5 years?
Yes, I was just about to say you should definitely write another book, because it'll be quicker than 5 years now. So good that you are. Another question that we had by email just before tonight's launch was a really interesting one, and one that I want to address, and that's, what if I'm not as good as I hoped I'd be? What if this is me, but I'm thinking it could be more? And that's the difference. Could it be more, or should it be more? And Nat, you mentioned the shoulds. Sometimes the reason we think it should be more is because we failed to see how good it already is. So when we think to ourselves, yeah, this is me, but am I as good as I could be? And I guess the answer to that question is, it's this self-improvement piece, that there's always going to be more. But rather than us searching for more and feeling like we need to be more, it's more about focusing on what we've got and allowing that to evolve. Because as we grow with experience, as we grow through leveraging our strengths, as we become who we're supposed to be, I'm not the same person now that I was even 2 years ago, let alone 10 years ago, but it's all me underneath. And I think for me, that's the difference. Sometimes when we're thinking about self-improvement, we think, I have to be different, I have to be more. But it's all us underneath. It's about tapping into that, into what exists. So yes, there may well be an element of, this is me, but I'm not quite yet where I want to be. There may still be an element of us evolving into the person we want to be. But there'll be a whole heap of stuff that we tap into internally that helps us get to that point. So it's that balance of evolving to be the person you want to be, but not in line with the shoulds and the beating ourselves up and the needing to be more and different. And when we think about, why is the person I am now maybe not who I want to be? Is that because I'm comparing to others? Is that because there's some more things I want to focus on? Is that because some changes I need to make in my life? Only you can answer that question. But one of the starting points should always be, what have I got that's great that I can build on? Because so often that's not our starting point. So often we look outside of ourselves, particularly to someone else, and think, I should be more like her, or I should be doing what she's doing, instead of what is it that I am? What is it that I want? And Nat, you talked about that in your around the shoulds. Awesome. Thanks, Kath. It's ringing so true. Thanks, Nat. And Emma Kate, good to see you on the call. So we've got, I'm just going to scroll up here. We've got a question here. This is a great one. So being on the fence, striving and striving, there's a fine line between burnout and motivation. Yes, you're so right, Andrea. I'm glad you brought that up. I wrote a blog a while back called Striving or Arriving. And for me, I'm possibly like many of you on the call. I am, I guess, yes, overscheduled, as Serene said, but always wanting to achieve more. And I can often find myself spending a whole year working towards a goal, and it's like a book. And as soon as, in fact, I'll use this as an example because it's timely and relevant. I spent 6 months writing this book. It hasn't even come off the press yet, and I've already started writing the outline for book 4. And I'm almost done with book 3 now, because I'm focused on the next goal. And I shared this, Nat T, with you last week. I'm always looking for the next thing, the next goal. And because of that, even though I write about this stuff, because of that, I find that sometimes I don't get to celebrate my own achievements in the way that I should, in a way that I tell everybody else to. So for me, being able to enjoy this and celebrate this is an important part of this process before I rush on to the next goal, because it's so easy, particularly in our current society, to find ourselves constantly striving, yet never arriving. Because if we're always looking for the next goal, we'll never feel like we've achieved any of them. And yet the reason we're looking for the next goal is because we have achieved the original goal we set out to. So reflecting on that and being able to bask in that for a little while before we moved on, because yes, it's important to have ambition and that motivation, but not at the expense of never ever feeling like we've achieved anything. And that's what helps feed into this self-doubt of, I'm not good enough, I haven't achieved enough, because we're always focusing on the next thing. And of course, when we look in our heads at all the achievements we've had, what we see is the things we haven't got to yet, because that's where our energy and our focus goes, as opposed to all the things we have already have achieved. So before I rush off on book number 4, which obviously has already happened, I have to stop and think, this is 3. And Patrice kindly reminded me of that many times before we went live tonight. So hopefully that helps, Andrea, that difference between, yes, have ambition, have motivation, and when you strive, recognize those goals that you achieve. And it might not be big goals, it might be those little steps along the way. Every time you take one of those steps, celebrate it, reflect on it, mark it in some way, because that celebrates the striving. Otherwise, we will find we're constantly striving and never arriving. And then we don't feel like we've achieved anything, when there's so much to get us where we are today. There's so much that we will have done already, personally and professionally. So do we have any other questions on let me just have a look. We've had some new comments come in. What has COVID-19 taught me in relation to the subject of your book? Wow, so much. I think COVID-19 has taught us all so much, and not just from my own perspective, but the women who've shared things with me. I think I mentioned at the start of the call, there seems to have been sort of 2 different camps, and then people that have fallen in between. There's the, wow, I've all of a sudden got all this time because I'm not commuting and I can't go anywhere and I've got no social life. So I'm at home and I've got all this time that's given me perspective to consider what's really important. I found I've been spending more time with my family, and I'm not out every night. I'm not commuting to work, and I like that. Or some people have found that they don't like the bubble that they're in, and that's giving them cause for reflection. And then, of course, you've got the other end of that extreme, where COVID-19 has been really challenging for people who have obviously got sick, maybe lost loved ones as part of this, maybe at home trying to run a business or work full-time with 3 young kids. Their partner's an essential worker and is not around as much because they're super busy right now. And so there's been 2 different, I guess, camps in this space. And for me, I'm certainly in the perspective camp. What it's taught me is the value of slowing down, the value of taking time. It's helped me be more creative because I've got the time and space. But having said that, I'm fortunate. I love the bubble that I'm in. I am an introvert naturally, so I like time by myself to reflect and create. So for me, I guess I feel like lockdown was made for introverts, and potentially we live a more extroverted world. And my transition might be more difficult going back into life than it was going into lockdown. And therefore more learning opportunities, because one of the things I often reflect on is that it's the challenges that we have that give us these learning opportunities, these reflections. So the more challenging COVID-19 has been for you, or lockdown has been for you, the more lessons you've probably learned, or the more observations you've probably seen as a result. So I'm just going to have a look at what else we've got here in the questions box. Oh, awesome. Emma Kate, you're writing your book. That's great to hear. And you've committed to it now in writing. Thank you, Christine. Yes, staying in the moment a little while, definitely. That's really good advice, Serene. Being in the present.
One more question from Betsy, in case you missed it, Jess.
What's that question, love?
Betsy says, I think because we're high achievers, others tend to raise their expectations. How do we manage the expectation and start putting down boundaries? From Betsy.
Boundaries is a great one. Thank you, Betsy, for bringing that up. It's that comparison thing a lot of the time as well. When we surround ourselves with high achievers, that can be great in terms of our own ambition and our own striving. But one of the things it can also do is make us feel inferior. This is something I found when I first came into business. I joined a lot of women's networking groups because I thought I could learn from them, and I have, and it's great. But also what I noticed it did is I looked around at all these people that were a lot more established in business than me, and all of a sudden found myself feeling really inferior, thinking, well, my website doesn't look like theirs. I haven't got that many following. I'm not this, I'm not that. So a lot of the time when we do look externally, particularly at high achievers, we will feel like we're falling short. And also we're not always comparing apples for apples in that space, because what we might look at, for example, is someone that's been in business for 10 years, that has a lot more resources behind them than we do. And then we compare ourselves and wonder why we're falling short. And so as high achievers, when we do look externally, we're always going to be setting ourselves up to fail. But one of the most important things you mentioned, Betsy, in that question was boundaries. And I talk about achieving our potential is often as much about the things that we don't do as it is about the things that we do. And that's where boundaries come in, because quite often, particularly if you are a busy person that likes to overschedule, that likes to please others, because let's face it, most of us do, we're conditioned to please others, put ourselves last on the list. So we will find that we don't like to say no. And we'll say yes to everything, yes to everyone, we'll be busy striving. And all of a sudden we find there's no time for us, or we've set ourselves up to fail, or we've crammed our schedule with too many yeses and we've run out of time to actually do any of them very well. And so that's that balance of being a high achiever and always wanting to say yes, with having good boundaries about, okay, what am I saying yes to? Why am I saying yes to it? Does it align with my priorities and what matters to me? And do I have time and energy, obviously, to deliver on that? Because otherwise we set ourselves up to fail. There is a tendency, and I'm just as bad at this as everybody else, there is a tendency to always say yes. We don't want to let people down, and we want to help wherever we can. And sometimes we can't say no. Sometimes it's an emergency. Sometimes it's a family member that we can't let down. But most of the time we have a choice as to whether it's a yes or actually, I'd really like to, but I can't right now because I'm overscheduled, or I'd really love to, but can we not do it next week instead of this week? So yeah, boundaries is a really important part of your achieving from a high achiever potential, and they're the barriers that exist to us delivering on that, particularly that external comparison that we find. So I'm hoping that's helpful. Do we have any other questions that I've missed, Love, on the line before we wrap up?
No, that's all.
Awesome. And I think I got all of the ones, I'll just check my list. I think I got all of the ones that were emailed beforehand. So the only thing left, we're at 8 o'clock, so I'm going to wrap us up. The only thing left for me really to say is that these are arriving at the end of the week, so they will be with you early next week. For those that haven't ordered their copy yet, Patrice has popped a link. You might just do that again now, Love, so that it's there to hand for people. Has popped a link for where you can order them from. The ebook is available, obviously. That hasn't been disrupted by COVID-19. It's just the printed copies we're getting at the end of the week. So you will get them first thing next week. And you can get this with Like a Girl for $50, or the Superwoman Survival Guides of $30 on their own. They all come signed. They all come with a free Kawa Kawa balm, and they will come with free postage and packing to New Zealand as well. So thank you so much for joining me tonight. It's been a pleasure to have all of you on the line, and I'm rapt that so many people have been able to tune in and give up part of their evening to be with us tonight. I hope that you've been able to have some champagne or something equally delicious in your house. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you so much for joining us. Mā te wā.